Lena had always been a quiet girl. She lived in a small, peaceful town surrounded by wide green fields, wooden fences, and friendly neighbors who waved at each other every morning. Her house stood at the edge of town, next to a big open field where the wind moved gently through the tall grass. From her window, Lena could see the world waking up every day, the sunrise coloring the sky in orange and pink, birds flying over the trees, and sometimes rabbits hopping in the distance. While other children her age loved going to the park, playing games on their phones or talking in groups after school, Lena found joy in something different. Her best friend wasn't another girl or boy from her class. Her best friend was Rex, a big, clever German shepherd with golden brown fur and bright, watchful eyes. Rex wasn't just a pet to her. He was family. She had grown up with him. Her father brought him home when he was only a tiny puppy who could barely climb the steps to the porch. Back then, Lena was just a little girl, too. Every day after school, while other kids rushed home to watch TV or play games, Lena ran to the backyard. There, Rex waited for her. His tail would wag so fast it looked like it could sweep the ground clean. She would drop her school bag, sit on the grass, and wrap her arms around his strong neck. Rex would lick her cheek, and she would giggle every single time. It was their little ritual, a greeting that felt warmer than any words. Lena's bond with Rex grew stronger over the years. She didn't just feed him or walk him around the block. She trained with him. At first it was just small tricks. Sit, stay, roll over. She learned how to speak to him softly with patience and kindness. Rex responded with full trust. As time passed, Lena added more commands. She learned how to guide him through small obstacle courses they built in the yard with old boxes, sticks, and ropes. While other children learned new games at school, Lena and Rex learned teamwork. Sometimes neighbors would stop by and watch through the fence. They would smile and say, "That's a smart dog," or "She's got a real talent with animals." But Lena didn't train Rex to impress anyone. She did it because she loved it. It made her feel alive, like she and Rex spoke a secret language only the two of them could understand. One sunny afternoon, while Lena and Rex were practicing a new trick, a long, graceful jump over a wooden bar, she overheard two older boys talking. "Hey, did you hear about the dog showcase next month?" One of them said. "Yeah," the other answered. "That's for professionals. Only real trainers go there." They talked about how big the event was. People came from different towns to compete. There were trophies, ribbons, applause, and sometimes even reporters who wrote about the winners in the local newspaper. Lena listened quietly, pretending not to care, but deep down her heart beat faster. She had always dreamed of something like that, a place where Rex could show the world how amazing he was. That night at dinner, she looked across the table at her parents. Her father was cutting vegetables and her mother was telling him about her day. Lena took a deep breath. "Dad," she said softly, "can I enter Rex in the dog showcase next month?" Her father looked up, surprised. "The regional showcase?" he asked. Lena nodded. Her mother smiled gently, but with a hint of worry. "Sweetheart, that event has a lot of older trainers. It's not easy." "I know," Lena replied, "but I've been training with Rex for years. He can do it. We can do it together." For a moment there was silence. Then her father's serious face softened into a smile. "If this is what you really want, then we'll support you." And just like that, it was decided. Lena and Rex were going to the biggest event they had ever dreamed of. The next weeks felt different. Lena woke up earlier than usual. She stretched with Rex, brushed his fur until it shone in the sunlight, and practiced every routine they could think of. She watched videos of past dog showcases on her father's old laptop. She learned about the different categories: agility, obedience, and freestyle routines. She saw handlers moving confidently with their dogs as the audience clapped and cheered. At first, it was a little scary. The handlers looked so experienced. They wore matching uniforms, carried whistles, and spoke in a firm, practiced tone. Lena didn't have any of that. She had old sneakers, a plain t-shirt, and her bond with Rex. But that, she told herself, was enough. Every afternoon, the backyard became their training ground. Lena marked the course with cones and painted lines on the grass. She timed Rex as he ran through tunnels made from large cardboard boxes. She trained him to leap over obstacles, to stop and sit at her command, to spin and bow gracefully at the end. And Rex, loyal, brilliant Rex, gave his all. He never grew tired of learning with her. When she stumbled over her own feet, he waited patiently. When she laughed, he wagged his tail like he understood the joke. When she clapped, he puffed his chest proudly as if to say, "We're a team." On weekends, her parents would sit on lawn chairs and watch them practice. Sometimes her father would time their routine with a stopwatch, and her mother would bring lemonade. Neighbors passing by would wave and say things like, "You two are getting good," and "I'll bet you'll surprise everyone at that showcase." Lena didn't know if she would win anything, but that wasn't why she wanted to go. She wanted to show people what Rex could do, what their friendship had built. Then came the day of registration. The showcase was held at a large open park in the next town. Lena walked into the registration area holding Rex's leash. Her hands were a little sweaty, but Rex's warm presence calmed her. Around her were tall teenagers and adults with their dogs. Shiny coats, expensive collars, polished routines. She could hear snippets of conversations. "We've been training with a coach for months. My dog took second place last year. This year, we're aiming for first." Lena looked down at Rex, who tilted his head as if to ask, "Are we ready?" She nodded. "Yes, boy, we're ready." But not everyone shared her confidence. A group of older girls glanced at her and whispered something to each other. One of them laughed quietly. A man standing near the judge's table looked at Lena, then at Rex, and raised an eyebrow. "She's competing?" someone asked in a surprised tone. Lena felt a little spark of doubt in her chest, but Rex nudged her leg gently. It was like he was saying, "Don't worry about them. Just trust us." At that moment, Lena realized something very important. This wasn't about looking impressive. It wasn't about expensive collars or matching uniforms. It was about her and Rex. The long afternoons in the backyard, the shared laughter, the quiet moments when they learned to trust each other. She lifted her chin, signed her name on the registration sheet, and walked away with a steady step. Over the next few days, Lena kept training harder than ever. She didn't try to copy the others. She focused on their unique routine. When the showcase day finally arrived, she stood at the edge of the field wearing her plain white t-shirt and sneakers. The crowd buzzed with excitement. All around her were handlers who looked more experienced, more prepared. But none of them had Rex. None of them had their bond. The announcer's voice echoed through the park, calling out names and numbers. One by one, the other handlers walked onto the field with confident smiles and practiced routines. Lena watched closely, not with fear, but with quiet determination. She wasn't here to be like them. She was here to be herself. And right beside her, Rex waited patiently, his ears alert, his tail gently wagging. The sun shone on his golden-brown coat, making him look almost royal. People in the crowd noticed him and whispered, "That's a big dog, and he looks well-trained." Lena smiled softly. They didn't know yet what Rex could do, but soon they would. The morning of the showcase arrived like no other. The sun rose slowly, casting a warm golden glow over the town. Birds were chirping in the trees, and a soft breeze moved the curtains in Lena's room. She opened her eyes before her alarm even rang. It wasn't just another day. It was the day she and Rex had been waiting for. Lena sat up and looked at Rex, who was lying next to her bed with his head resting on his big paws. The moment their eyes met, Rex lifted his head and gave a soft bark as if to say, "We're ready." Lena smiled and reached down to scratch behind his ears. "Good morning, buddy," she whispered. She got dressed carefully. Nothing fancy, just her favorite white t-shirt, jeans, and her comfortable sneakers. She tied her hair into a simple ponytail and looked in the mirror. She didn't see someone small or weak anymore. She saw someone who had worked hard, who had practiced for weeks, who had a partner she trusted more than anything. Downstairs, the smell of pancakes filled the air. Her mother had made breakfast early just for her. Her father sat at the table with a mug of warm coffee. They both smiled when they saw her come down with Rex right beside her. Her mother said softly, "Big day today." Lena nodded. She didn't need a long speech. Her parents knew how much this meant to her. Her father handed her a water bottle and said, "Remember, no matter what happens out there, we're proud of you." She smiled, hugged them both, and gave Rex one last pat before they all got into the family car. Rex jumped into the back seat, sitting tall, his ears up, watching the road ahead as if he understood exactly where they were going. The closer they got to the park where the showcase was held, the more cars they saw. Vans with dog logos, Cars with stickers that said "Proud Dog Trainer" and even a few trailers with fancy cages in the back. Lena's heart beat faster with every turn. She looked out the window and saw people walking their dogs toward the event grounds. There were big dogs, small dogs, fluffy dogs, and sleek ones. Many of them wore colorful ribbons or shiny collars. Handlers walked beside them with confident smiles and straight posture. Lena glanced at her plain outfit and then at Rex's simple black collar. For a tiny moment, doubt tried to whisper in her ear, "You don't look like them. You don't have fancy things like they do." But Rex leaned forward and pressed his nose gently against her shoulder. She laughed quietly. "You're right," she whispered. "We don't need any of that." When they arrived, the park was already buzzing with energy. Tents lined the edges of the field. Loudspeakers were set up. People moved everywhere, some talking excitedly, some warming up their dogs, some checking schedules and numbers. The air smelled like grass, warm sunlight, and the faint scent of dog treats. As Lena stepped out of the car with Rex, she felt the weight of the crowd. She wasn't invisible anymore. People were actually looking at her. Some smiled politely, but others gave her the kind of glance that said, "She's too young for this." A man in a green jacket near the judges' table looked at the registration sheet and then at Lena. "You're competing?" he asked in a surprised tone. Lena nodded, holding Rex's leash firmly. He raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything else. He just handed her a participant tag with the number 17 written on it. She pinned it on her shirt carefully, trying not to let her shaking fingers show how nervous she really felt inside. As she walked toward the waiting area, she heard small bits of conversations. A teenage girl with a poodle whispered to her friend, "She's just a kid." Her friend giggled softly, covering her mouth. A group of adults standing near the corner talked about their trainers, routines, and awards from last year. Their words blended into a soft hum, but Lena didn't need to hear everything. She could already tell they didn't expect much from her. Rex didn't seem bothered. He walked proudly beside her, his tail high, his eyes alert. It was as if he didn't care about what anyone thought. He only cared about her, and somehow that gave Lena strength. She led Rex to a quiet spot under a tree where they could warm up. She opened a small bag with treats and toys, her hand steadying as she focused on Rex instead of the crowd. "Okay, buddy," she whispered. "Let's show them what we've got." They practiced simple commands. "Sit." Rex sat perfectly. "Stay." He didn't move an inch. "Spin." He twirled in a perfect circle. Each time she rewarded him with a treat and a pat on the head. As they practiced, a few people glanced their way. At first, they didn't pay much attention. But when Rex completed a few more difficult tricks, some of them paused. One boy even nudged his friend and pointed. But still, many had that look, the kind that said, "Let's see if she can do this on the real stage." Soon, a voice echoed through the loudspeaker. "Welcome, everyone, to the annual Regional Dog Showcase. Please gather around as we prepare to begin the event." The crowd moved toward the main area. Handlers lined up with their dogs waiting for their turn. Lena joined the line, her small figure standing among taller competitors. She held Rex's leash gently but firmly. Her heart pounded fast, not because she was scared, but because she was ready. The announcer continued, "Today we'll be judging obedience, agility, and overall performance. Remember, this is about teamwork, trust, and connection between you and your dog." Those words made Lena smile. Teamwork and trust. That was exactly what she and Rex had. Maybe she didn't have the most expensive outfit or the loudest cheer squad, but she had something real. As the competition began, the first few handlers stepped forward. A woman with a border collie guided her dog through an impressive series of jumps and turns. The crowd clapped loudly. Then came a teenage boy with a golden retriever. Their routine was smooth and well-practiced, and the judges nodded approvingly. Lena watched carefully. She admired their skill but didn't let it shake her. Each routine reminded her why she was here. She wasn't here to copy anyone. She was here to show the world her bond with Rex. Then came the moment she had been both waiting for and dreading. The announcer called, "Number 17, Lena and Rex." Her name echoed through the speakers and all eyes turned to her. Lena felt her breath catch for a second. She looked at Rex. He looked back at her with calm, trusting eyes. His tail wagged slightly as if to say, "We've got this." She took her first step toward the field. The grass felt soft under her sneakers. The crowd's noise faded into the background. It didn't matter what anyone thought anymore. What mattered was the two of them. But just as she reached the starting point, she overheard a voice behind her. "She won't last a minute," someone whispered. Another chuckled softly. For a heartbeat, Lena's stomach tightened. Doubt tried to crawl back in. But then Rex leaned gently against her leg, steadying her like he always did. She straightened her back, lifted her chin, and smiled at him. "Let's do this, boy." The judge gave a nod. The whistle blew softly. And just like that, the spotlight was on them. The first obstacle was the ramp. Lena remembered how many times they had practiced this in the backyard. Rex stepped forward confidently, his paws moving in a strong rhythm. But the ramp was higher than their homemade one. For a split second he hesitated. The crowd murmured. A few people tilted their heads, ready to see a mistake. Lena whispered gently, "It's okay, Rex. You can do it." Her voice was calm and full of trust. Rex's ears twitched, and then he moved forward, climbing the ramp with strength and grace. When he reached the top and jumped down smoothly, the crowd gave a small but surprised clap. Lena's heart soared. They had cleared the first challenge. The rest of the round continued like a dream and a blur all at once. Every time Lena gave a command, Rex followed. Every time Rex looked at her, she gave him encouragement. They weren't trying to impress. They were simply being themselves. The same girl and dog who had spent countless afternoons training together. Still, the whispers from the beginning of the day echoed in Lena's memory. And strangely, instead of breaking her, they pushed her forward. She wanted to prove, not with words but with every step, that she belonged there. By the time they walked off the field after their turn, something had changed in the air. People who had ignored her before were now actually looking at her differently. A little boy clapped loudly. A woman near the fence smiled and said softly, "That was good." Lena knelt down, wrapped her arms around Rex's neck and whispered, "You were amazing." Rex licked her cheek in response, making her laugh. She didn't know if they would win. She didn't know how the judges would score them. But she knew one thing for sure. They had shown their heart. And sometimes that was worth more than trophies. After their first performance, Lena and Rex walked back to their waiting spot under the big tree. Lena's hands were still a little shaky from the excitement, and her heart beat fast like a drum. Rex walked beside her with his tail wagging slowly, his ears up, looking as proud as a dog could be. Lena knelt down and hugged him tightly. "You did so good, Rex," she whispered. His warm fur brushed against her face, and for a moment, it felt like the whole world had faded away. All she could hear was his breathing and the distant hum of the crowd. But as the next rounds began, Lena quickly realized something important. The competition wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. She still had to go through the agility challenge and the final freestyle routine, where every team would show their best tricks. These rounds would be harder, longer, and filled with more pressure. The next few teams were strong. A tall teenage girl with a Dalmatian ran through the course with almost no mistakes. A man in a blue vest guided his husky through a routine so smooth that even some judges clapped quietly. Lena watched closely, feeling the weight of what was ahead. She wasn't jealous. In truth, she admired their skill, but watching them also made the butterflies in her stomach flutter even more wildly. She tightened her hands around Rex's leash as if holding him would calm her, and in a way it did. "Don't forget," she whispered to herself. "You and Rex have trained for this." But the real test came when they entered the warm-up area before the agility round. The space was filled with handlers practicing with their dogs. Commands echoed everywhere. "Jump! Stay! Heel!" Whistles blew. Dogs barked. Trainers gave quick, sharp instructions. It felt like stepping into a storm of sound and movement. Lena and Rex began to warm up, but it was harder to focus. A big man with a Labrador almost bumped into them during a practice jump. "Watch it, kid," he said without even looking back. Lena stepped aside quickly, feeling small and unnoticed. Near the corner, a group of older teens were laughing and talking loudly. One of them pointed in Lena's direction and whispered something to his friend. She couldn't hear the exact words, but she saw the way they laughed. Her chest tightened a little, and her hands felt cold. Rex noticed it right away. He looked up at her with those sharp, loyal eyes. He didn't need to speak. His look was enough to remind her why they were there. She took a deep breath and whispered, "We're here for us, not for them." The whistle blew, calling the next group to line up. Lena and Rex stepped onto the agility field. This was the round everyone said was the hardest. The course stretched wide, a series of hurdles, tunnels, ramps, hoops, and weaving poles. The rules were simple: finish fast, finish clean, no mistakes. As they stood at the starting line, Lena heard someone behind her murmur, "This round will eat her alive." Her stomach twisted. But then she felt Rex press his warm body gently against her leg, grounding her. She placed her hand on his head. "We can do this, boy," she whispered softly. The judge raised a hand. "Ready to go." The whistle blew. Lena took a step forward. "Rex, jump," she called. Rex leapt over the first hurdle with the kind of grace that only comes from trust and hours of practice. The crowd clapped lightly. She smiled, feeling a small wave of confidence. But the second obstacle, the tunnel, was longer than anything they had practiced at home. Rex hesitated at the dark entrance. He lowered his head, sniffing. The crowd grew quiet, watching. Lena felt the pressure of every eye on her. "Come on, Rex," she said gently, kneeling closer so he could see her face. "I'm right here." Rex's ears twitched. He trusted her voice. With one deep breath, he pushed forward and ran through the tunnel. When he popped out the other side, tail wagging, the crowd cheered louder this time. Lena laughed in relief. "Good boy." But they weren't in the clear yet. The next challenge was the weaving poles. It required perfect timing and rhythm. Rex started strong, but halfway through, a sudden burst of noise from the audience distracted him. A loud laugh from the stands. He turned his head for just a second, breaking the pattern. Lena's heart skipped. If he didn't finish properly, their score would drop. She quickly knelt down and called his name again, her voice calm, not panicked. "Rex, eyes on me." He turned back immediately. She gave a small hand signal, one they had practiced 100 times in their backyard, and Rex picked up the weave again, finishing beautifully. The final stretch was the ramp and hoop jump. By now, both Lena and Rex were breathing fast, their hearts racing, but they were still in sync. She ran beside him, whispering commands softly. The crowd was no longer whispering doubt. Now there were actual cheers. Rex jumped through the hoop with a clean landing. The moment his paws hit the ground, Lena threw her hands in the air, laughing out loud. She hugged Rex right there on the field. The judge blew the final whistle, signaling the end of their run. The audience clapped loudly. Some even whistled in support. Lena looked around, amazed. She wasn't invisible anymore. The same people who had doubted her earlier were now leaning forward in their seats, some nodding approvingly. She walked off the field with Rex trotting proudly beside her. Her father waved from the sidelines with a big smile, and her mother clapped with both hands. That moment felt bigger than any ribbon, but their journey wasn't finished. The final and most important round was still ahead, the freestyle performance. This was where teams showed their creativity, trust, and style. It wasn't just about speed or skill, it was about connection. Lena and Rex sat under the tree again to rest before their turn. The sun had climbed higher in the sky and the air was warm. Rex drank water from his bowl, and Lena wiped her forehead with a small towel. She could hear other competitors performing in the distance, the music playing, the cheers rising, the dogs moving gracefully with their trainers. Lena felt proud, but a small shadow of worry crept in. She didn't have a choreographed dance like some of the older handlers. She didn't have a fancy costume or background music. She had only their routine, the one they had practiced in their yard 100 times. Simple, clean, full of trust. What if it wasn't enough? She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing slowly. She thought back to the first time she had taught Rex to bow, how clumsy they were at the beginning. She remembered rainy afternoons when they trained even though the ground was wet. She remembered the way Rex had always trusted her, even when no one else believed in her. She opened her eyes and looked at him. He was lying on the grass, his head resting on his paws, calm and ready. And in that moment she realized something important. It wasn't about being the fanciest. It was about being them. "Hey, buddy," she whispered with a small smile. "We don't need to be like them. We just need to be us." As the final round approached, Lena saw the other performers getting ready. One girl wore a sparkly outfit, her dog doing spins to the beat of music. A man guided his dog through a series of tricks so sharp and synchronized that the crowd erupted in loud applause. Lena's heartbeat grew faster again, but it wasn't the same kind of fear she had felt before. This was something else. Excitement. When her number was called again, she stood up. Her parents waved from the stands. A little boy who had clapped for her earlier shouted, "Go number 17." That made her grin. Rex rose beside her, ready. She placed her hand on his collar and whispered, "No matter what happens, you're the best dog in the world." They walked toward the performance area as the sun glowed behind them, casting their shadows long across the grass. People were watching closely now, not because they doubted her, but because they wanted to see what she would do next. The announcer said, "Next up, Lena and Rex." Lena took her position. She didn't have music, but she had something better, a bond that didn't need any words. She looked into Rex's eyes. He looked back, steady and loyal, and just like that, their final round began. Lena stood in the middle of the wide performance field. The soft green grass beneath her feet felt cool, even though the afternoon sun was shining bright. The crowd was quiet now, not because they didn't care, but because they were curious. She wasn't just the little girl with the big dog anymore. After her last round, people wanted to see what she and Rex would do next. Rex stood beside her, tall and calm, his shiny coat glowing under the sunlight. His ears were up, and his eyes stayed fixed on Lena. In that moment, it felt like the world around them disappeared. There was no crowd, no judges, no other competitors. There was only Lena and Rex, two best friends who had trained together for years. The announcer's voice echoed gently through the loudspeaker. "Next up, contestant number 17, Lena and her German Shepherd Rex." The applause began softly. A few people in the stands cheered louder than the others, and Lena recognized the little boy from earlier waving at her with both hands. She smiled, gave a tiny wave back, and then slowly took her position. The freestyle round didn't have background music for everyone. Some performers brought their own, but Lena hadn't. She didn't have fancy speakers or costumes. But that didn't matter. She had a routine made with love, patience, and countless afternoons of hard work. She had trust. Lena took a deep breath, then whispered softly to Rex, "Let's do this, buddy." She gave him their first signal, a small nod. And just like that, Rex stepped forward and began their performance. Their opening trick was something they had practiced since he was a puppy. Lena walked backward slowly while Rex walked forward on his hind legs, balancing perfectly as the crowd gasped softly. His movements were smooth and strong, his tail wagging slightly. Lena's heart lifted when she heard clapping start earlier than expected. Next came the synchronized routine. Lena spun around slowly and Rex twirled beside her at the same time. She jumped once and he followed with a leap. She ran in a small circle, and he stayed right at her side. Not too fast, not too slow, like they were moving to a song that only they could hear. The judges leaned forward in their chairs. The crowd began to cheer louder. She could see people smiling, nodding, and whispering in surprise. Lena wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was just enjoying every second of being out there with Rex. Every move they made came from trust and love. When she whispered, "Down," Rex lowered his body gracefully. When she said, "Up," he jumped through a hoop she held in her hands. He didn't miss a single beat. Halfway through the routine, Lena added a part she had never shown anyone before. She placed her hands on her knees and gave a quiet command. Rex ran across the field, made a perfect turn, and sprinted back to her. As he reached her, he jumped, and she caught him in a way that made it look like a dance. The crowd let out a louder cheer. Some even stood up. For a split second, Lena felt something she had never felt before, not fear, not nerves, but pure joy. She was exactly where she wanted to be. But then came the hardest trick of all, their finishing moment. This was the part that always made her heart race. It was a combination of signals and timing that they had practiced again and again. Lena knelt down slowly and whispered, "Ready?" Rex tilted his head, his ears twitching, understanding the familiar word. She raised one hand and he began to back up, step by step, creating a perfect distance between them. Then she lowered her hand and he charged forward, not wildly but with focused energy. He leapt high through the air, right through the hoop she held above her head. He landed softly, spun around, and bowed down, one paw stretched forward like a performer taking a bow on stage. Lena bowed beside him. The crowd erupted. Cheers filled the air. Claps echoed across the field, and even some of the judges were smiling widely now. People who hadn't even noticed her before were on their feet. Someone whistled. Someone else shouted, "Bravo!" Lena felt her chest tighten, not with fear but with emotion. She placed both hands gently on Rex's face and whispered, "You did it, buddy." Rex wagged his tail hard, panting happily as if he knew exactly how special this moment was. They walked off the field together, and something incredible happened. People actually stepped aside to make space for them. Some clapped as they passed. One woman said, "That was beautiful." Another handler, a boy a few years older than her, gave her a thumbs up. She smiled shyly, not used to so much attention, but inside her heart was shining brighter than ever. Her parents were waiting near the fence. Her father had tears in his eyes. Not the sad kind, but the proud kind. Her mother held her hands over her mouth like she couldn't believe what she had just seen. Lena ran toward them with Rex at her side. "You were amazing," her mother said, hugging her tightly. Her father patted Rex's head. "And you," he said to the dog with a laugh, "you were a star." Lena laughed too, but deep inside she still didn't know how the judges would score them. There were so many strong teams, and some of them had been training with professionals for years. She was just a little girl from a small town with her best friend. The announcer began calling the next few performers, and Lena sat on the grass with Rex, listening to the music and the cheers. She was calmer now. Whatever happened, she had already won something far more valuable than a ribbon. She had proven to herself that she belonged there. She gently stroked Rex's fur. "You know," she whispered softly, "they didn't believe in us at first. But look at them now." Rex rested his big head on her lap, closing his eyes. He didn't care about scores or trophies. All he cared about was being with Lena. The sun slowly dipped lower, painting the sky with soft shades of gold and pink. The final performances came to an end. The announcer's voice echoed again, asking all participants to gather near the stage for the results. Lena stood up, brushed the grass off her jeans, and gave Rex a reassuring pat. "Whatever happens, we did great," she told him. They joined the line of contestants. This time people didn't look past her. They looked at her. Some even smiled at her warmly. The teenage girl with the Dalmatian gave her a small nod. The man with the husky said softly, "Good job out there." Lena nodded back politely, feeling shy but proud. The announcer began reading the scores for each round. Numbers were called out. Teams were praised for their performances. As each name echoed, Lena held her breath a little tighter. "And now," the announcer finally said, "for the freestyle round, our top scorers are..." The crowd went silent. Third place, contestant number 23. A wave of applause broke out for a teenage boy. Second place, contestant number 11. More cheers followed. Lena squeezed Rex's leash, preparing herself to clap for whoever got first place. And finally, the announcer said with a warm smile in his voice, "First place in freestyle performance goes to contestant number 17, Lena and Rex." For a moment, she didn't move. She thought maybe she had misheard, but then the cheers burst out again, louder than ever before. Her parents jumped from their seats, clapping and laughing. The little boy in the stands was shouting her name. Even some of the people who had laughed earlier were now clapping with big smiles. Lena slowly walked forward with Rex beside her. One of the judges handed her a shiny gold ribbon and a small trophy. She didn't even care about how heavy it was or how bright it looked. All she could think about was how Rex had done it. They had done it together. She knelt down, hugged Rex tight, and whispered in his ear, "You're my hero." The announcer invited them to stand at the center of the stage. Flashbulbs from cameras sparkled as people took pictures. For the first time in her life, Lena didn't feel small. She didn't feel like the quiet girl from the edge of town. She felt strong. She felt proud. Rex stood beside her with his chest out and his tail wagging like a champion. As the applause went on, Lena looked out at the crowd. She spotted the group of teens who had laughed earlier. One of them was clapping with a grin, nodding in respect. Lena didn't need to say anything to them. She had already said everything she needed to say, not with words, but with what she and Rex had done on that field. The sun continued to set, casting a soft orange glow over the stage. It was the perfect ending to the day. Lena held the ribbon in one hand and Rex's leash in the other. But in her heart, she knew the real prize wasn't the trophy. The real prize was that moment when the crowd fell silent and then erupted into cheers. The real prize was the trust in Rex's eyes. The real prize was proving to herself that she was capable of more than anyone expected. As they walked off the stage, people came up to her, people she had never met before, and said things like, "Great job," and "You two were amazing." Lena smiled and thanked them softly. She didn't need to be the loudest or the biggest to shine. All she needed was a friend like Rex and a heart that wouldn't give up. The sky had turned a warm orange as the sun began to set behind the trees, casting long shadows over the park. The air was softer now, filled with the sound of chatter, laughter, and the occasional excited bark from a happy dog. The showcase had ended, but the energy in the air was still alive, a special kind of glow that lingers after something truly unforgettable happens. Lena sat with Rex on the grass near the big oak tree where they had waited earlier in the day. She still wore her number 17 tag pinned to her shirt, and in her lap lay the golden ribbon and small trophy they had just received. She ran her fingers over the smooth surface of the ribbon, hardly believing it was real. It sparkled softly in the fading sunlight, but what sparkled even brighter was the feeling inside her chest. Rex lay beside her with his head on her lap, breathing calmly. His fur was warm against her legs. He looked content, tired but happy. Lena gently scratched behind his ears and his tail thumped softly against the ground. It was their quiet time now, just the two of them again. Earlier, the entire crowd had been cheering for them. People had clapped, smiled, and even asked for pictures. But now, under the tree, it was peaceful. She whispered, "You were perfect, Rex. You did everything perfectly." Rex lifted his head slightly, as if to listen to her voice more closely. His eyes sparkled the way they always did when she spoke to him. She smiled, remembering every second of their performance. The way he had leapt through the hoop, how the crowd had gasped, how the cheers had grown louder and louder with every trick. Those sounds would live in her memory for a very long time. A small group of children came running toward her, their shoes making soft thuds on the grass. One of them was the same little boy who had cheered for her earlier. He had a wide, excited grin on his face. "Your dog is amazing," the boy said breathlessly. "He's the best one I've ever seen." Lena laughed shyly. She wasn't used to so much attention. "Thank you," she said softly. "He's my best friend." The other children nodded eagerly. One little girl asked, "Can I pet him?" Lena smiled and nodded. "Of course. He's gentle." They gathered around Rex carefully, patting his head and stroking his soft fur. Rex wagged his tail slowly, enjoying the love and attention. He didn't bark or move too quickly. He just sat there calmly, the way he always did when children were near. It made Lena's heart warm. Watching them, she thought back to the morning, how nervous she had been, how people had whispered and doubted her. Now those whispers were gone, replaced by claps, smiles, and kind words. It was strange how quickly things could change when you just keep believing in yourself. As the children left, more people approached. Some were other handlers who had competed. A teenage girl with a Dalmatian walked up first. She smiled and said, "Hey, that was a really good performance. Your dog is incredible." Lena blushed a little. Compliments were new to her in a crowd like this. "Thank you," she said politely. "Your Dalmatian was amazing too." The girl laughed lightly. "Yeah, but your freestyle round, that was something special. You two move like you can read each other's minds." Another competitor, a man with a husky, added, "You proved everyone wrong today. I saw people doubting you before the show started. I think they'll remember this for a long time." Lena didn't know what to say, so she just smiled and nodded. She wasn't angry about those early whispers anymore. In fact, she was grateful. Those doubts had made her stronger. They had made that victory moment even sweeter. Then came the judges. Lena wasn't expecting them to approach her personally. But the lead judge, a kind-looking woman with silver hair tied in a neat bun, came forward with a soft smile. She said, "Lena, I've been judging this event for many years. What I saw today between you and your dog is something truly special. It's not just about tricks or speed. It's about connection. I could see the trust between you two in every move." Lena's throat felt tight with emotion. "Thank you," she whispered. The judge placed a hand gently on Rex's head. "This kind of bond can't be bought or taught overnight. It comes from love and patience. You should be very proud." Lena nodded, blinking back happy tears. She looked down at Rex, who was now sitting upright, his tail still wagging. She wrapped her arms around his neck, holding him close. "I am proud," she whispered into his fur. "So proud." As the event slowly cleared out, her parents joined her. Her father still held his camera. He had taken so many photos during her performance that his memory card was almost full. Her mother's eyes were shiny with pride. Her father knelt down beside her and said softly, "You didn't just win a ribbon, Lena. You showed everyone your heart." Her mother nodded, adding, "And Rex showed everyone his too." Lena hugged them both. She could feel how proud they were without needing any big speech. Their smiles said everything. They walked to the car together with Rex trotting happily by their side. The trophy clinked lightly in her hands as they walked. She didn't hold it like a prize. She held it like a memory, something she would treasure forever. As they reached the car, they saw a small group of people waiting near the gate. One of them, the man who had raised an eyebrow when she signed up that morning, stepped forward. He didn't look arrogant anymore. In fact, his expression was soft and a little humbled. He said, "I'll be honest, kid. I didn't think you'd make it past the first round. But you proved me wrong. That was one of the best performances I've seen here." Lena didn't feel angry. She simply smiled and replied, "Thank you. Rex and I just tried our best." The man nodded. "Well, your best was better than a lot of people's expectations." As they drove home, the sun disappeared completely, and the sky turned a calm blue with the first stars beginning to twinkle. Lena leaned her head against the car window, holding the ribbon gently in her hand. The streetlights passed by one, but her mind wasn't on the road. It was on everything that had happened that day. The fear, the whispers, the cheers, the hugs. Rex sat in the back seat, his head resting on the seat, eyes half closed but ears still twitching at the sounds outside. He looked tired but happy. Lena whispered softly, "We did it, boy." Rex gave a small wag of his tail in reply. When they arrived home, the house felt different. It wasn't bigger or brighter, but something about it felt warmer. Her parents placed the trophy on a small wooden shelf in the living room. It wasn't a big shelf, but it was right in the center, a place of honor. The golden ribbon hung beside it like a shining memory. Lena knelt down next to Rex and whispered, "See that? That's ours." Rex leaned his head against her shoulder. It was their quiet way of saying we did this together. That night, as Lena lay in bed, she couldn't sleep right away. Her mind replayed every moment of the day, the nervous morning, the warm-up, the tunnel, the weave, the crowd, the cheers, and the moment Rex leapt through the hoop. She smiled in the dark, knowing she would remember that feeling forever. She also thought about something more. She realized that her victory wasn't just about a trophy. It was about what it meant. It showed that being small didn't mean being weak. It showed that quiet strength could shine just as bright as loud confidence. It showed that when two hearts trust each other, even a little girl and her big German shepherd, they can surprise everyone. In the following days, news about Lena and Rex's performance spread through the small town. People at school whispered about it in the hallway. Her teachers congratulated her. Even neighbors who hadn't known much about the competition came by to say, "We heard what happened. You and your dog were amazing." One day, a girl from her class, when someone who had never really talked to her before, sat next to her at lunch and said, "I saw the pictures from the showcase. That was so cool. I wish I was brave enough to do something like that." Lena smiled shyly and said, "You can. You just have to believe in yourself." Rex became a little local celebrity too. When Lena walked him through town, people often stopped to pet him or say hello. Some kids even asked if she could teach them a few tricks with their own dogs. Lena didn't think of herself as a teacher, but she shared what she knew with kindness and patience, the same way she had learned with Rex. And every time she looked at that golden ribbon on the shelf, she remembered the most important lesson of all. It wasn't about trophies. It was about love, trust, and never giving up just because someone doubts you. Lena and Rex kept training together, not because they needed more awards, but because that was their favorite thing to do. Every day after school, they still met in the backyard. The grass was the same. The wind still whispered through the fence. But now when Lena gave Rex a command, she carried something new inside her, a quiet, unshakable confidence. Rex would always be her best friend, not because he won a competition, but because he had believed in her when no one else did. And that, she knew, was the greatest prize of all.